Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Kingsmen. Another week, another new episode. We have survived state playoffs in Washington State with high school. An absolute blast of a weekend, some epic thrillers. But there are some also epic basketball games in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. We haven't talked about any of that, so we're just going to break down the entire series here in a quick segment. Luke, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I know you were dialed into especially Game 7, but I know you had your eyes on these conference finals.
Well, just in one last desperate ditch effort to not be proven wrong, and I said Celtics in 6. I was wrong. It was Celtics in 7, but I was finally right about something. And I did pick. Oh no, I picked the Suns to go to the finals. So here we are. It's nuts, but at least I guessed something right. I don't know. It's all just grasping at straws at this point.
Yeah, I mean, both of us were. Neither of us did well in our predictions. We do. I will give you credit. You avoid hearing a lot from Miami Heat fans. Let's start in the East. You were so confident in the Celtics knocking out the Heat that the Heat weren't good enough to win the finals. Turns out you were right, so we'll give you that one. But, man, they gave the Celtics all they could handle. The Celtics squeaked one out. And, again, I just think it was not enough offensive firepower for Miami to keep up with what's a very loaded offensive team in Boston.
Yeah, no, it's very tough, especially when the defense really starts to key in. Again, I think, Al Horford has absolutely had a ridiculous playoffs. This series was no exception. So I think that they were really able to start keying in on defense. Jimmy did get some crazy games, had some outrageous buckets, but in the end, Boston's defense stayed super consistent. They adjusted to everything the Heat were throwing at them. And then what you alluded to, or I guess you outright came and said, the Heat just don't have the firepower, man. They don't have, I don't want to speculate, but throw Bradley Beal on that team and maybe see what happens. I don't know. Someone who can just absolutely fill it up. I know that obviously didn't work out for the Philadelphia 76ers, but that's what it feels like. It feels like the Heat are able to just get there and then falter for whatever reason. And obviously game 7 was this close. So they just played up until those last couple games, I think. It was like some really crazy discrepancies. It was all blowouts. But then once it came down to the nitty-gritty, two teams that have, at least in recent memory, been kind of known for giving up leads and choking a bit, they really had to buckle down and see who was ready to take the next step, as cliche as that is.
Yeah, well, the old adage is defense wins championships, and the Miami Heat definitely buy into that. They go hard on the defense, but I mean, when you look at their roster, they're probably number 2 scorer behind only Jimmy Butler is coming off the bench. I mean, you got to have an elite scorer to go alongside Jimmy Butler, in my opinion. That's not coming off the bench because Tyler's not getting very many minutes. He's not putting in, the 30-plus minute games. You got to find a way to get a good score to balance things out with Jimmy Butler, to take the pressure off of Jimmy Butler that's going to be out there most of the game, if not, 40 minutes. You got to find that. You can't have your number 2 guy coming off the bench and not really getting that much playing time.
Well, yeah, that's definitely it. I think that they really thought Pham was going to give them a lot more than he has. Especially in the bubble when they went to the finals. I mean, he was unreal and seemed like he kind of had the same groove Anthony Davis did, where they just hit whatever shots they wanted. And when they were feeling it on a certain night, Adebayo could really go off. And when he goes off on one side, odds are he's going to take over the game on the other side too. So I don't know. I mean, obviously you take a look at some of the stat lines, they're still there-ish for Bam, but he needs to be, he's undersized. That's a big problem, but he needs to be a big-time scorer for him, or else they're not going to be able to have enough offense to really get past the teams that know how to grit out some close, tough wins.
And when you look at the Celtics, credit to them. They haven't really been 100% since the first round, and they still had some guys banged up when they were playing Brooklyn. They haven't lost back-to-back playoff games in the playoffs so far. They seem to bounce back so quickly. They're not getting to it. It's unbelievable. And guys, again, are stepping up in big ways. Jason Tatum looked much better throughout this entire series than he did against Milwaukee. But again, you want to talk about defense. This team plays really good defense too. I don't think that gets talked about enough. I noticed it, of course, when they were playing Milwaukee. They're going to swarm you, especially on the outside. If you're going to beat them, you got to take advantage down low. I know they've got some guys down there, especially with Williams coming back. He's back, seems to be close to 100%, at least getting on the court every night. But I mean, when he's out there, the defense they have on the perimeter, it is going to be very, very interesting to see how you even go about attacking them, because they're so good everywhere on the floor.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what Draymond Green's been talking a lot about this lately too, is the like playoff level defensive teams and just what the Warriors have to really do to get past them and to fight through all the switches and the hedges on the screens, because that's a lot of what the Warriors do. But I mean, it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of stamina to be able to get good looks over and over and over with a team that just won't stop dogging you. And the Celtics really have that kind of defense in them. And don't get me wrong, the Warriors defense has been pretty darn solid too. It's got them through some games. But there's a lot of guys to stop for the Celtics. So I think that they're going to have their hands full. But, ooh, baby, what a series this could be.
Yeah, let's hop on over and talk about the Western Conference Finals. The Warriors kind of took care of business. Didn't really ever seem like that series was in Dallas's favor. Just jumped out and really put their foot on the throats. And Luka's help all of a sudden disappeared in the Western Conference Finals. It was the Luka show once again. What we see from Dallas, hats off to them for getting that far, because I don't think many people, including myself, thought they were capable of it. They seem to have taken the right step. But again, when you go up against a team like Golden State, where they just have the perfect balance of veteran guys and these young up and comers, and everyone can score. And then when you got a defensive stalwart like Draymond Green down low, they just are unbelievable. And I think that people overlook them once again.
I mean, who is having one, like, who comes back like Klay Thompson?
Nobody.
Right? Like, he's unbelievable. And he's just stepped right back into it. I mean, what, he got like 20 games? If that, no. I don't know. A very limited amount of games before the postseason hit. And it's just like, oh, yeah, hey, here's Klay again. Comes back feeling like an absolute king, and that has helped them out tremendously. Obviously, Jordan Poole's been incredible. Draymond is, I mean, you can tell when he's inspired and he knows that, okay, we're in a spot now where we can go for another championship. He's locked in. He's given his utility effort that everyone gave him original credit for. And so you got to love that from him. He's also making really good decisions. And the Warriors, they just have so many spots, like you said, where they can attack you. Wiggins is somehow added like 5 inches to his vertical in the last 5 games. So everyone's playing just more determined, and that like they know they're going to win the championship.
And I mean, it's hard to argue with. And you talked about Klay bouncing back. It wasn't like he was just out for a few months. He was out years. He missed a ton of time, and to come back and look like this, it is unbelievable. And of course, Steph is going to be Steph. It's ridiculous. We're watching one of the greatest basketball players of all time. We are obsessed with talking about LeBron, who's, again, I mean, top 2. Steph's got to be way up there as well. I mean, the best shooter we've ever seen in the game by far.
Yep.
I think
just that fact alone puts you top. I mean, it puts you top 10 bare minimum, right? Just that fact alone.
And the Warriors struggled last year, and I think that's why a lot of people came in thinking, oh, they're a fringe playoff team, is what a lot of people were looking at them for. Maybe a 5 seed, maybe a 4. And again, they came in as a 3 seed, but they're one of those teams, just like we talked about Milwaukee, just get to the playoffs and do the rest there. The Warriors have flipped it, completely turned on another gear. It's really, really special to see these guys make another run. I think there are a lot of people who kind of rolled their eyes when they were winning championships when KD was back there. Now it's the originals. It's the OGs. It's Steph, Clay, and Draymond, and they're bringing Poole and Wiggins now, and they look as good as ever.
Yeah, no, they look like they're ready to win another couple titles. Like they'll just rattle that off, whatever. But I mean, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment and say something, as I just say that. But I don't want to maybe overstate like where this team is at, because we did see that they can have slumps. They had a couple games in this Mavs series where they had some slumps. The only problem is Luka doesn't have help to take advantage of that. So, I mean, Brunson, they kind of put the world on his shoulders, right? Him and Luka co-owned that. But Brunson all of a sudden just comes out of nowhere, and not out of nowhere, but still comes into the playoffs and starts overachieving for what we know to be his average, right? And so they were already putting a ton of pressure on him. Dinwiddie, he was already overachieving for them, so the ceilings had kind of been reached for the time being for the season. So you're right. Like it's another team, right? It's another team that could use another bona fide star. But then my question would be, where would you put him? How does he work with Luka? How do you have a guy play so off ball and still get the looks and still match that production? So that's a whole nother conversation. But Luka just needed someone, and that someone never came with players that typically would have in previous rounds.
Yeah, and you talked about the Warriors also having their slumps. I just wanted to add this real quick. They 100% have their slumps, but can you name another team that can score as quickly as they can? They can erase a gap in the blink of an eye. I mean, all of a sudden everyone gets hot and they're draining threes. They can go on a 15-0 run in literally the blink of an eye, and all of a sudden you lose that lead. And with Dallas, again, they brought in Porzingis thinking that he'd be kind of the sidekick to Luka, and it just never worked out. I don't know if Luka's going to want that help to be a big man down low. I think they need to look small on the perimeter and find a guy who can catch and shoot. I mean, that really could be what it comes down to. Just a guy for Luka to be able to get the ball to as he's driving, defense collapsing on him, and a guy who can knock down the shot.
I bet they wish they had Seth Curry right about now. I bet
a lot of
they wish they had someone like Seth Curry, that old Kyle Korver prototype, what Danny Green used to be, right? They can play some defense for you, either at the 2 or on the wing. And then when they're open, and I mean, of course, there's lots of plays to work the ball away for Luka or his dribble penetration. Seth Curry in the corner, bam. Also, I'm sure. How long did PJ Tucker sign for with Miami? Do you know?
He was only 2 years.
Okay, well then he still got one left, I guess. But man, that's another guy that's like he just instantly makes you a better playoff team. So there's some guys out there that aren't necessarily going to be Bradley Beal, aren't necessarily going to be. Shoot, I can't even think of another big free agent coming up, but that aren't going to be a big name, but could help you out tremendously and give you that 18 to 20 points a game that you need.
And before I let you go, Luke, I have 2 questions for you. First, is Draymond Green a Hall of Famer?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm 100% there with you. I think that he still doesn't get talked about. I mean, it seems like when people do want to talk about him, it's bad mouth. And of course he's got some, I'm not going to say he's a dirty player, but he's had those issues in the past. But I mean, is there a better defender when the game's on the line in the playoffs besides Draymond Green? Because I can't think of one.
You'd be hard pressed to find one, man. I mean, unless you reach back, unless you go for like a Hakeem Olajuwon or someone like that. Yeah, you're very hard pressed to find one because Draymond Green he's very smart, man. And I don't know if it's just everyone kind of gave him, once he got that donkey moniker, right? People kind of talked down to him and didn't treat him like an intelligent human being. We've heard him talk on TNT. Like he's a player and he signed a contract to be part of the media. And like, make no mistake, he is going to be, I'm calling this now, he's going to be a pinnacle, a pillar of NBA media come 10 years. Like he's going to be one of the best personalities in the game. But he is incredibly smart. He is a great communicator. He's a good teammate. A lot of times he does say the right things. Yes, he can get caught up in the moment, but that stuff is few and far between. And the one time that he really did let that get the best of him, the Cavaliers came back 3-1. So that's something that he really tries to avoid now. But yeah, Draymond is absolutely a Hall of Famer, man. You're a hater if you think otherwise. And I know the stats aren't super inflated, but when you look at them as a whole and just look at that, do the eye test, see how he's helped them win those championships, and all that he's really done, because he does have some impressive highlights out there, despite not being a prolific dunker or a prolific 3-point shooter.
Yeah, I mean, when you're on a team with Stephen Clay and even KD, nobody's going to really talk about your offensive scoring, but you don't need to score offensively. I mean, it's Rodman with the Bulls. I mean, it's the same thing. He just knows what he has to do. I agree with you. I think he's matured a lot as well. He's grown up. He can control those emotions a lot better. A lot of young guys, we see this all the time in every sport, have those hot-headed issues. I mean, the one that comes up in my mind is, of course, is Myles Garrett with Mason Rudolph. I don't think Myles Garrett ever even thinks about doing that now, but I think Draymond has grown up a lot, and I'm right there with you. He's got to be a Hall of Famer. Now, question number 2. Last question. Who will be the NBA champions come here in a few weeks?
Oh, still think it's the Golden State Warriors, man. Yeah, I think it's Golden State, and I think it goes 6 games.
I've had a tough time deciding who I think is going to walk away as champions, but I'm right there with you. It is so hard to bet against the Warriors right now, especially with the scoring coming from so many different guys. And again, this is the first time these guys for the Celtics have been on a stage like this. Are they ready 100%. Is always going to be the question. Whether it's fair or not, it's going to be the question compared to these guys like Steph, Clay, and Draymond. Yeah, Boston's got Al Horford, but I mean, 3 guys who have been there, done that compared to Horford.
This is Al Horford's first finals.
Yeah. I just don't think you can go against the Warriors. I think it goes 7 with Boston having home court. That's going to be a tough last game, but I have the Warriors getting the job done in Boston. I just think the leadership, the guys who have been there, done that, get the job done.
That's the first thing that my mind goes to too, Matthew. So, I mean, I think that's a great point. But the first thing is, we were just saying about this Celtics team, not last year, but 2 years ago, it was just like, well, they're just not ready. They're making highlight plays. They're showing flashes. Jason Tatum's out there dunking on LeBron. Jaylen Brown is out there splashing threes, and he's getting, crazy thunderous dunks, but it was the maturity. We didn't think that they didn't lack the pieces, but it was the maturity and the experience and the veteran leadership there. They've got some of that now. They've got a lot more playoffs under their belt, but this is still GSW. This is the Dubs. This is Yay area. They've got all of the energy, all the tools, all the knowledge that they need, that they've had for years now to win a title. It just all is going to come down to execution. So I think that the Warriors, when it comes down to it, when they're at this strength, at this health, which we haven't really seen them at for a while now, it just all comes down to their execution and making shots, getting the job done. Because they are the best team at doing that than anyone else in the league. They'll bury you, like you said, 15 points in like 3 minutes. They are known for like the third quarter curb stomp. When it comes to, the playoffs, no one has done it better in the last, 20 years at least. So it's going to be impressive, but this Celtics team, they're a lot better than they were. So 7 games, I think, is not out of the question whatsoever.
It is going to be a blast. And when this episode comes out, it's the day of game 1. We cannot wait. Luke, I appreciate you joining me as always. We always love having you on here, and glad to have you back home from college. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, brother. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Jacob hops on. We got a lot to talk about in baseball, including another slap. People just slapping each other in 2022. It's getting out of hand. We'll be right back on the Kingsmen. Welcome back for more of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. We're going to talk baseball with Jacob. Now we're going to start with maybe the second most famous slap of the year, I guess, behind, of course, the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident, I guess you could call it. Tommy Pham slapping Jock Peterson right in the mouth because of a fantasy football issue and because apparently he made a comment about the Padres when Pham was with them.
A comment or a meme?
Either way, I mean, Tommy Pham's losing it, I think, because go back just weeks ago, he was trying to fight Luke Voigt, who plays for the Padres. So, I mean, it is just absolutely bizarre what is going on with Tommy Pham. I don't know what's gotten into him. If the struggles he's had this year are kind of just firing up. But my goodness, this guy needs to reel it in. We talked about Josh Donaldson last week. At least he's playing good baseball. Tommy Pham's just losing it and not really making up for it anywhere else. I mean, come on. You got to be better than that. There's no need for that. Fantasy football and a meme. Every time I think I've seen it all, something new happens.
Yeah. You might want to take out a restraining order because some of those comments you just made might trigger Tommy if he hears it. No, it's just so beyond ridiculous. I mean, it goes beyond throwing a tantrum. This guy has had ages to think this over, and he landed on this being the correct move to address a fantasy football quarrel. I don't know how much research you've done. I was tracking like what kind of fit. Could I know some of these guys put good amounts of money on there, and so don't mess with other guys' money, but he was mad that Jock put a guy on IR and was stealing him from the rest of the league. And it just doesn't make sense to me. So, no, I don't think that Tommy would have survived some of our fantasy football trash talk rooms.
Yeah, there's been a lot of we've been in some fantasy leagues together, and there have been some trash talking that just
went for the throat.
I don't know. Yeah, Tommy Pham, I don't know what he would have done to us if he was in. I mean, I think we're both thinking of the same league that we've been in.
Yep.
Where we kind of reeled it back, but I mean, come on, it's fantasy football. Again, like you said, they could have been playing for a lot of money. We don't know, but still, I mean, there's so much better ways to handle it. Again, Pham's probably just frustrated. I mean, he's on the Reds, for crying out loud. That can't be too much fun right now. So,
right.
I just, that story completely blew my mind, and we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about it to some extent. Right. But my goodness. And Jock Peterson, no offense, he's not the guy I think I'd want to mess with necessarily. Jock's got some size on him. I mean, he might wear some pearls, but I'm not going to make fun of him for wearing pearls. That's for sure.
Honestly, I was about to make fun of him. I'm like, if anything's slappable, it's how he looked in that post-game interview. He looked like a 3-year-old boy that grew up to be 200 pounds, but didn't change any of his appearance whatsoever. Just the hair and the backpack straps and the hat sideways. it was kind of laughable to me. I'm not going to lie. But the way he just calmly explained and read everything, he's like, yeah, let me make sure I quote correctly. Yep, here's the meme, guys. What do you think? And I just, there's no merit to Pham's side of the story. It just, as one side as I can be about celebrity altercations right here.
Yeah, and I really think it's gotta play into, or I think you gotta take into consideration how bad the Reds are playing. That has to play a role in it. He's got to just be absolutely frustrated. Just at the end of his road, I mean, it is just really, really bad what's going on with those Reds players right now. But I mean, come on, there's been some bad teams that haven't gone over and slapped the taste out of the mouth of another player and then come up with a lame excuse for doing that. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on. We're about to start June. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be June. Absolutely crazy to think that we're already there. So we decided to go through and rank the top 10 teams in baseball so far, both Jacob and I. I think we're going to see a lot of similarities because I do think there's a pretty big gap in there. I'm not sure, probably around 13 or so, and then a big gap to number 14. But so I think we're going to see a lot of similarities, but I'm very interested in how we both broke this down. So Jacob, let's start at number 10 and work our way to number 1. Who do you have just inside the top 10?
I got the St. Louis Cardinals, and I got 2 words, and it's Paul Goldschmidt. It just incredible offensive side to that team, kind of making up for some of their lackings. But yep, Cardinals coming in at number 10 for me.
So at number 10, I've got the Angels. They've been on a little bit of a skid, so I actually ended up dropping them down quite a bit from where they had been. But I mean, they still got all the talent in the world. I think they're going to bounce out of this pretty well. They've got leadership on the team. I mean, they've got a good balance of young guys. Mike Trout, he's going to get the guys back focused up. And Shohei Ohtani, I still don't think he's playing his best baseball right now. He's hitting the ball pretty well. I think he's still going to turn it up. Pitching, Anthony Rendon, he knows what it's like to go through the entire grind of a season. I mean, remember, he was on that World Series team with the Nationals where it just looked like they were completely done in about May or June and end up turning it around and winning the World Series. So I think he's going to have that don't panic attitude. Noah Syndergaard's been there, done that. He's made a World Series. So I think they're in a good spot. But yeah, they definitely needed to get bumped down a little bit. So I have them just inside the top 10 at 10. Yep. Number 9, what you looking at?
Number 9 is the reason that I don't have the Angels in the top 10, and that's the Blue Jays. They hit, talk about skids. They were struggling there for a little bit, and the Angels are not the easiest team to wake up on. So the fact that 4 games took care of business, I'm putting them at number 9.
So I also have the Blue Jays at 9. Like you said, they had that skid. But again, this team just feels like they're going to break out of it at any time. The starting pitching still concerns me, and the bullpen. We all know they're going to score runs. Kevin Gausman, he's going to be a really great pitcher for him. Alek Manoah is also just an absolute stud. He's looks like a bright future piece for them. But outside of that, Jose Barrios really hasn't got things figured out this season. Yusei Kikuchi, we know from experience, he is so hot and cold. It's really
B-,
not the guy you want starting in a postseason game or a must-win game. But yeah, they're starting to come out of it a little bit. Those bats are going to try and take them as far as they can. But I mean, I think they're the 3rd best team in that division right now, and I have them at number 9. Yeah. Number 8, I've got the Minnesota Twins.
Okay.
So I've got the Twins. We talked about the Twins a lot recently, so I'll kind of keep this short. But like we talked about it off air, Carlos Correa coming back and then just going on COVID IL. I didn't know that. Jacob informed me of that. It's been a busy week. But again, these guys, I think, are the surprise team right now. And I think they have that staying power. I think they're going to be right in the playoff talk for the entire season.
So at number 8, I actually have the Rays, and it goes back to what I said at the start of the year. Kevin Cash can make nobodies perform like stars, and so when you're thinking a top pitcher, I'm guessing that Shane McClanahan and Drew Rasmussen were not above Kluber this year, and I know that's gonna balance out, but that starting rotation has been a welcome surprise for that club.
I actually have the Rays at 7, so I'm going to piggyback off that. Remember, Glasnow was supposed to be their ace. Tyler Glasnow, he was supposed to be the guy for them. He's still out after having Tommy John last season. So, yeah, that rotation has stepped up in a big way. I know a lot of people were high on McClanahan coming into the season. I don't know if anyone expected him to be as dominant as he has been. He's just racking up the strikeouts. Wander Franco is going on the IL, so that is a concern, especially with that team ahead of them in the standings, who I'm sure we're going to both talk about here in just a little bit. So that's a worry. I don't think this team's going to win that division, but yeah, they're going to be a playoff team, and they're going to be a team that you want to avoid at all costs because of how they can utilize the rotation, and they use the opener better than anyone else in baseball. So a team you got to look out for. I have the Rays at 7.
And I have the Twins at 7. So not much more to piggyback off of because we've already talked about the Twins. But yeah, Correa coming off a DL, going on a tear, just seemed to come back with a vengeance. Was concerned to read that this morning that he was going on COVID IL. So, and it was a positive test. It wasn't a close contact. So I can't keep track of, how many days that means, but it hurts to lose him right after you got him back.
Yeah, that's above our pay grade. We're not trying to keep
Yeah.
track of all that.
I'm not a doctor, okay?
Let's get to number 6. I think we are going to have the same exact teams in the top 6 now. I have the San Diego Padres at 6. I think this is a team that is very solid. I remember they still don't have Tatis back yet. As soon as they get him back, that is going to be a big spike in their production on offense. Jake Cronenworth, I don't think people talk about him enough. He is just an absolute hitting machine at the top of their order. Manny Machado and Eric Hosmer seem to have turned back the clock. They look like they are playing their best baseball of their career. And again, they're still waiting for the rotation to start hitting on all cylinders. I think it's a win, not an if for that. I am worried about Blake Snell still, but all in all, I think this team is very solid, and they get to beat up on some of the lower end teams in baseball, like the Diamondbacks and Rockies. Unfortunately, the Rockies taking a step back.
Right. No. So 6, I actually have the Astros coming in, and had them a little higher until they kind of got embarrassed this last week. But we'll save that for the Mariners mini. No, talk about scary pitching. I mean, one of the spookiest rotations in baseball without McCullers. They're hoping to get him back around All-Star break time, but they have been performing. You say turning back the clock, but Justin Verlander just seems like he doesn't have a clock. And so I have them at 6 just because they did get beat up a little bit this last week, but still just a scary team.
I have the Astros at 5 still. Again, Verlander, he gets owned by Kyle Lewis, but again, we'll talk about that in Mariners minis. But yeah, in the lineup, I am concerned about the lineup because they aren't producing runs like they have in years past. Yordan Alvarez can hit the ball a long way, though. I have been blown away by the way he's playing this season. Got to give him a little bit of love. Kyle Tucker, though, he's been hit or miss so far for them. And of course, Altuve's been in and out of the lineup with injury issues. Bregman's had issues. I'll tell you the one guy I really enjoy watching, and I know we're supposed to just hate all the Astros, but there's a new guy right there who wasn't around during the cheating scandal, so I don't feel bad at all about loving him. Jeremy Pena is so much fun to watch. Yeah. He is just an absolute superstar. He's got to be my favorite Astro, and I'm glad that he wasn't part of that scandal, so I can just enjoy watching him because, man, he's special, and he has taken over for Carlos Correa and just not looked back. So I have the Astros at 5.
Yeah, I do like watching Pena, and I've told people for years, if the Astros just would have stayed in the National League, I wouldn't have as much hate for them. The scandal did hurt. I'll still boo almost that entire squad when they come up to bat. But that kid, he's hard not to like. I know the bar isn't too high when you talk about favorite Astro, but I agree with you there.
Who do you got at number 5?
5, I've got the Brewers. Most terrifying bullpen pitcher maybe in this decade. I know we're just starting this decade, but this guy, he shuts down games like no other. And so they're racking up the wins. I've got them sneaking in at 5.
Well, I'm going to build off that because I have the Brewers at 4. And I think he's the best reliever since Mariano Rivera hung it up. I mean, you go back and look at everyone since Mariano Rivera decided he was done playing baseball. Name a guy who's been nearly as dominant as Josh Hader. You can't. And he can tell you what he's going to throw, and you still can't hit it. He is so special to watch. And that rotation with Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and Peralta, I mean, they're starting to figure things out a little bit, and they're starting to hit the ball pretty well as well. Christian Yelich, still not the MVP, but better than where he has been the last couple of years. So, yeah, the Brewers, they're still the team to beat in that Central Division. Now, the question is, can they do it in the playoffs? Only time will tell, but yeah, they're the number 4 team for me.
And I've actually got Padres climbing up to number 4 for me. You did mention they've just been beating up on littler teams, but they're racking up those wins. They're staying toe to toe with the juggernaut Dodgers. The Giants are kind of falling out, and so they're right there where they wanted to be at the beginning of the year, even without all of the issues that they've faced this year. Their pitching has been so electric. I think that their rotation is the most overperforming rotation in the MLB. Just everyone seems to be dialing it up to 11 or 12. It's been really fun to watch.
I'm glad you talked about them beating up on smaller teams, but I also love that you had them up that high, because that is a conversation that I think has gotten me more worked up as of late than it has before, because that argument that they haven't played anyone, you can only play who's on your schedule. These teams don't make their schedules. It's not like college football where you literally schedule games out years in advance. Baseball, you play who's on the schedule. You play who the schedule makers give you. So I like that you still have them high, even though they are beating up on weaker teams, because they're just taking care of business. They're doing what they're supposed to do. So I applaud you for that one right there. Let's get into the top 3 teams right now. Number 3, I've got the New York Mets.
Yep, same.
Again, this team's extremely talented. This gap between number 1 and 3 is not very big at all. I think the gap between 3 and 4 is quite a bit larger. But I mean, no, the injuries to the pitching staff is why I have them a step below the Dodgers and Yankees. Spoiler, I've got those 2 teams as a top 2. But the lineup,
me too. Yeah,
the lineup is holding their own right now. It's kind of shoulder carrying the team, I guess you could say, while Scherzer and hopefully DeGrom get healthy. Don't really know if DeGrom's going to come back, but Tyler McGill has been just heaven sent for them, because without him, this team's in some deep, deep trouble. He has been fun to watch. And this team, I still think, is going to be one you don't want to see in October, because they will be healthy around that time.
Yeah. You said it. I wrote down, who needs 268 mil for your top 2 pitchers? They go down, and your lackluster but proficient offense does the job. I mean, these guys aren't slugging the ball like the Dodgers are. They're making contact, they're getting hits, and they're getting around the bases. And so, yeah, they're doing what they need to do while they wait for hopefully some good news with their bigger stars.
Now is where things are going to get a little bit interesting, because I know we have the same 2 teams in the top 2. So I'm going to make you start here. Who's your number 2 team?
The Yankees. You said there's a big difference between 3 and 4, and not a huge difference between 1 and 3, but to me, there is quite a big difference between 1 and 2. I mean, the Yankees are doing great things. They're really finding their stride. One thing I really have to applaud them on is all of their divisional wins right now. They're just beating up on their own division, and that's going to really make a dent when it comes to later in the year. But right now, they're still number 2 to me.
Yeah, this was really tough for me, looking at how these teams have played and who they've played. And what I always come back to with the Yankees is that stadium where it's so much easier to score runs. Can they do that on the road per se? So I agree. I do have the Yankees at number 2 as well, just because that going on the road concerns me a little bit. These little fly balls that turn into home runs. And I just think that their lineup isn't as deep as the Dodgers, but I love where the Yankees are at. I think they're in a good place. I'd be stunned if they don't go out and add just a superstar pitcher at the deadline, because that's something I think they could add. Nasty Nestor Cortez is filthy. He is so much fun to watch. But yeah, I like where the Yankees are at. I think this is what they've been expecting for the last few years in the Bronx. That takes us to number 1, where we are in agreement. It's the Dodgers. And I think the gap's smaller than what you said. But again, this team, the lineup top to bottom is deeper than the Yankees. The rotation is much better than the Yankees. Bullpen, I think, is pretty even in terms, probably give the slight edge to the Yankees, actually. But again, this rotation is just filthy. They lead all of baseball in team ERA. They lead baseball in runs scored. There's just nothing that the Dodgers can't do. They can outscore you. They can outpitch you. I mean, hats off. Good luck finding a way to beat them.
Exactly. That and skill wise of the players, you're right. It's probably closer 1-2, but just the way that they've been playing, Dodgers have just dominated. It wasn't, 2-4, 3-4. Their run differential is disgusting. I don't see how teams don't just give up in the 6th inning sometimes. They're like the bad guys of a baseball movie. They just beat you up and don't quit, and they're going to continue doing that. I don't see too many answers by most of the teams in the league. Once you get to, October, the gloves come off and you really see who's got the depth, and sometimes just having a good night plays the biggest role in knocking somebody out who probably should have beaten you in the long run. But this regular season, I see nobody getting more wins than the Dodgers.
And due to some personal relationships in our lives, trust me when I say this, Jacob and I will look anywhere to try and find a way to not put the Dodgers at the top. So that tells you how good they really are, when we both can't really even deny it right now. That team's just playing really good baseball. All right, now we're going to introduce a new topic here, and it is going to be something I think we might try on a monthly basis starting in July. But for now, we're going to do it week by week. Jacob and I are going to draft teams for baseball, and these are entire teams. So we're going to draft, for example, it could be the Yankees, and see who finishes with a better record at the end of the week. So we're going to add all the wins and all the losses up, and whoever has the better record is going to earn a soapbox moment. We haven't done too many soapbox moments. I think we've just done the one so far for our NFL mock draft. So we're going to try and figure out a way to incorporate that a little bit more, get some more soapbox moments in. And I think this is a great way to start. So we are going to actually come up with a draft, and I think we're going to do a snake draft to try and counteract the number 1 pick, because otherwise I think things are going to be a little one-sided when it goes to the number 1 pick. So we haven't even decided who's the number 1 pick right now, but I'm going to give you the opportunity. I'm going to let you choose, Jacob. I'm going to give you the choice if you'd rather have the number 1 pick or if you'd go 2 and 3.
Nope, no, we're doing this old school.
All right,
we'll do a coin flip. All right, call it in the air. I don't think you can see it because of my filter, but I'll show you.
Honor system. All right.
Okay, ready? Go.
Heads.
It's a Mexican coin. I don't know if that's heads.
I
Good.
can't see. Okay, I win.
Okay,
Like I can't see it regardless of if it was a US quarter or a Mexico quarter. All right. So I guess I am going to take the number 1 pick for the week and let you go ahead and take 2 and 3. So looking at this was tough because there's a lot of teams with tough schedules this week. Yeah. Some teams that a lot of the good teams are on the road, and the ones that are at home are hosting very good teams as well. But with the number 1 pick, I am going to take the Houston Astros. They have 3 at Oakland and then 3 at Kansas City. They're coming off of a tough series in Seattle, so they're going to be motivated, and I think they're really going to be dialed in. So I think the Astros are in a good spot to take 5, even maybe 6 wins this week if they can go perfect. So I'm going to take the Astros.
Astros were going to be my first pick, that's for sure. I like that schedule. I think I will go Yankees. They're playing the Angels and the Tigers. And then I'm going to go down a little ways, but I'm going to pick the Giants. They're playing the Phillies and the Marlins.
I like that Giants pick. I was eyeballing them for my second pick because, the Phillies and Marlins, not easy games per se, but I mean, games you got to feel good about winning. So that puts me in a tough spot for these next two. Again, there's just so many tough schedules out there for these squads, but I am going to go with the Dodgers next. They are at home with Pittsburgh for 3 and then 4 with the Mets. The Mets series scares me, but they should load up on wins against the Pirates. And then I feel like they should be able to take at least 2 against the Mets. So I'm going to go with the Dodgers. And with the last pick, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take the Seattle Mariners. They have 3 at Baltimore, 3 at Texas. They took care of Texas the first time they played when they took them on in Seattle. And the Orioles are red hot right now, but their pitching is a little bit of a question mark. And the Mariners seem like they're starting to hit the ball a little bit better. And they always seem to play good in Baltimore, at least the last few years. So I'm going to go with the Dodgers and then the Mariners for my last 2.
Okay. I like that. I think I'm going to go down a little ways on my list for number 3. I'm going to take the Atlanta Braves. They're playing the D-backs and the Rockies. I think they can weasel out a good few wins there.
I like the bold pick because I wouldn't have even looked towards the Braves this week.
They're starting to come into who they want to be. I know they struggled out the gate. I said that to begin with that they were going to. So I'm going to take that as a win, and they're going to hit their stride starting in June. They're going to get me some wins here.
All right, there you have it. So I'm going with the Astros, the Mariners, and the Dodgers. Jacob, you had the Giants, the Braves, and the first team was the Yankees, right?
Correct, yes.
All right, so there we go. We will take a look at it, and one of us will have a chance to do a soapbox next week. We'll see if I get my second, or if Jacob finally gets a chance to talk and have me shut up for once.
I'm getting the underdogs with me, so we're gonna see it through.
All right, we're gonna take one quick break. When we come back, we'll have our second week of Mount Rushmore. This week we're talking about the Arizona Diamondbacks. We already talked about a few Diamondbacks, I think, in this episode, or one that I think is gonna pop up here in our Mount Rushmore. So we will talk about that here coming up after this on the Kingsmen.
There are many ways for businesses to expand their customer base, but one of the tried and true ways of increasing customer loyalty and recognizing employees is to put your name and logo on promotional and motivational items. You can find a wide selection at Alderson's Awards West Printwares in Centralia. Shirts, hats, coats, mugs, pens, and more, all with high-quality screen printing or embroidery done on site. For a full catalog of items at great prices, go to aldersons.net, and remember, you will get maximum impact at Awards West Printwares. If you have suffered a personal injury that wasn't your fault, the attorneys at Rogers, Key, Card, and Strophe work hard to get you a fair settlement. Managing partner Scott Key spearheads the personal injury practice that features decades of experienced attorneys to represent you with a proven history of successful verdicts and settlements. You can find them at budbaylaw.com to schedule a free consultation with Scott Key.
Welcome back to the Kingsmen. It is time for our second Mount Rushmore in our series where we're going to go through every MLB team and probably end up touching on NFL, and who knows where we'll go from there. This week, we are going with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And again, a young team had one really, really good year, obviously, where they won the World Series. I think we're going to be living there for quite a bit, our Mount Rushmore. But we're going to start with Ketel Marte. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to start with Randy Johnson, of course. I know he's on yours. just one of the greatest pitchers of all time, had 2 stints with the Diamondbacks, won 4 straight Cy Youngs with Arizona. That is just mind-boggling. To win 4 Cy Youngs in your career is special, but 4 in a row, unbelievable. A career 2.83 ERA with them, and that ERA jumped up in his second stint with the Diamondbacks. That first stint, it was just absolutely disgusting. 2,077 strikeouts with them, 38 complete games, and I think one of the greatest outings of his career, obviously one of the greatest outings, came when he was 40 years old, when he threw the perfect game in his second stint with the Diamondbacks. Of course, as Mariners fans, we knew Randy Johnson was special, but when you actually look at the numbers, I think you just learn so much more about him.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the most dominant pitchers in the history of the game. When he first came up, and especially, into his early Mariner career, his biggest issue was his control, and it usually still worked out for him. I mean, he coined effectively wild. By the time he's a Diamondback, that's all behind him. He's already learned from other veterans. He is still scary throwing 101 miles an hour, and you're not 100% sure that it's going to not come at your face, but he's getting those strikeouts. He's not getting as many walks. He is just the scariest 6'10" guy throwing off of a hill that you've ever seen in your life. 4 of his 5 Cy Youngs came with Arizona, like you mentioned, in a row. Just incredible. You can't even make it up. There's a reason that he's wearing a Diamondbacks hat in Cooperstown, even though he played more years as a Mariner. He was just so incredible with that team. He made that team a championship. You can't say enough.
Yeah, of course, a little bit of bad blood with the Mariners organization when he was leaving Seattle. Obviously, you understand why he's with Arizona. But yeah, that's the thing. It's not just the stuff he was coming at you with. You brought it up. His size, he's gigantic. Having a man that big throw 101 miles an hour at you, and like you said, he might lose control of one a time or two, but then you also have to worry about the off speed, and it is just not fair. Go watch that at bat in the All-Star game against John Kruk. I mean, it is just comedy, and I don't think Kruk was trying to make it funny. I think he was genuinely in fear for his life.
Oh yeah. I think one of my favorite interviews, it wasn't even an interview, they were just playing around. It was Ken Griffey Jr. and David Ortiz in batting cages. And Ken Griffey's like, who's the scariest guy you've ever faced? And Ortiz is like, Randy Johnson, like, no question. And Griffey says, yeah, but you faced him in June and July. I had to face him in team warmups when he wasn't ready to go. And just, you think it was scary? You didn't know where that ball was going then? Oh, I had no idea where it was going.
Unbelievable career for Randy Johnson. He's going to be on the Mount Rushmore, pretty much any team he's been a part of besides maybe the Giants. But yeah, a special career for him. Let's go on to number 2, another part of the World Series win. We're going to talk about Luis Gonzalez, who I know a lot of people who are becoming baseball fans now probably don't even recognize the name necessarily. He was the scariest bat in 2001 for sure, but in that time period, not a guy you ever wanted to face. His career slash line was 298, 391, 529 with 224 home runs, 774 RBIs. He walked 650 times, over 1,000 hits. And of course, he's going to go down in everyone from Arizona is going to remember the one hit from him. And it is the walk-off RBI single, Game 7 off Mariano Rivera to win the Diamondbacks the World Series. When you do that, the rest of the numbers don't even really matter too much, but the rest of the numbers just support. He's one of the best to ever do it for the Diamondbacks, and I think the best hitter they've ever had.
Exactly. And what kind of hit was that? It was a little bloop. He is one of the best gap hitters the game has seen. He ranks among the top extra base hitters in the history of baseball. And not to mention, like you said, just the magic of that 2001 championship. he gave Mariano Rivera his only black mark on what is otherwise a spotless World Series resume. Only one blown save in a World Series game, and it came off Gonzo.
And it was the entire year. He hit over 50 home runs that season. And it seemed like Luis Gonzalez was just a journeyman coming on to that team. He was past his prime. He was in his 30s. Something clicked, and all of a sudden he was one of the most feared hitters, if not the most feared hitter in all of baseball that year. So, yeah, Luis Gonzalez, go watch that at bat if you've never seen it against Mariano Rivera. It is just unbelievable that he was able to beat the Mariano Rivera in a World Series. Like you said, something that's never been done again. And not only was Rivera almost spotless in the World Series, he's been almost spotless in the playoffs. He's just a one-of-a-kind pitcher, and Gonzalez is the guy who can say, no, I beat him. I beat him on the biggest stage to win a World Series. Got to be up there. So Luis Gonzalez on there. Next up, we're going to talk about Curt Schilling, another pitcher, only pitcher who started a game for 3 different teams in the World Series. That was a fun fact, learning about that. 58-28 record, 3.14 ERA, 875 strikeouts, 18 complete games. The co-World Series MVP with Randy Johnson in 0-1 because both of them were just absolutely sensational. And one of the nastiest split fingers you will ever see from a pitcher in the history of the game. Just dominant. Again, there's been some controversy with him, obviously, over the last decade or so, but just looking at what he does on the field, this guy should be a Hall of Famer. He is just a absolute stud when he takes the mound, and it didn't matter what team he was, but the Diamondbacks got the best out of him.
Yeah, and he only played a few years with Arizona. I mean, he won World Series with Boston, had a lot of success elsewhere. The best years of his career were in Arizona. He was the best number 2 behind Johnson they could have hoped for. He would have won at least another Cy Young if it hadn't been Randy just having the league in a stranglehold. Like you mentioned, he won co-MVP in the 2001 World Series. They've co-MVP'd twice in the history of baseball. Once in 81, the Dodgers shared it with 3 different guys. And then there was no clear winner about, okay, who brought this trophy to Arizona? And if you're the number 1, number 2 pitcher and you're holding it there with Randy Johnson, you had a phenomenal year.
Yeah, unbelievable career for Curt Schilling. Good with the Phillies as well. And yeah, I think you actually needed both of them to win that World Series. I don't think you can look at one guy and say they brought the trophy. You had to have them both. Otherwise, there wasn't going to be a Game 7. Yankees would have probably won that in probably 6 games. But yeah.
Or 5. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you looked at the Yankees starters then, I mean, you would have thought, oh, that was a lights out club. You had, never mind. I'm not going to go into the Yankees. This is Diamondbacks' time to shine. They won that. They get stamped in history in 2001 as the champions. And it was because of those 3 guys.
Now I think we're going to go to the one guy who's not in that era. Of course, another guy you think of when you think of the Arizona Diamondbacks, especially if you're a fan of modern baseball. We're going to go Paul Goldschmidt. An incredible hitter, 297, 398, 532 slash line, 209 homers, 710 RBIs, 1,182 hits. Second in pretty much every major category when it comes to hitting for the Diamondbacks, only behind Luis Gonzalez. So, I mean, you got that guy who was the face of the team for the decade, a team that really went into some trying times when Randy left from that second stint. Goldschmidt kind of brought them back, got them to the playoffs, gave that town, that state hope. And I think when you think of the Diamondbacks outside of that early 2000s era, Goldschmidt's the best to ever put on that uniform.
Yeah, like you said, every single franchise record that Gonzo doesn't have, Goldschmidt basically has it, offensive-wise, at least. And you got to think, this guy was an 8th-round pick that tore through the minors like no one thought he could, took advantage of every single opportunity he got. He's been an all-star more times than he hasn't. He's collecting Golden Gloves and Silver Sluggers. He's still enjoying just great success. He's the main reason the Cardinals are doing so well this year. And so in a league that's chock full of big name, top tier first basemen, he's a sleeper elite. currently. And a lot of that success was on the Diamondbacks. So I give him that number 4 spot on this younger team.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% right there with you, and that he's one of the more underrated first basemen, especially with the bat. And his glove is fantastic as well. And yeah, now that he's with the Cardinals, that Cardinals team's fun to watch. But he's the guy I still really think of when I think of the Diamondbacks, because I think when you're growing up, it's those teenage years that really make you. Those are the guys who stick with you forever. Goldschmidt was the face of the Diamondbacks. So same top 4. We talked about it off air. The only other one we really thought about adding was Brandon Webb. Other than that, we were pretty much set in stone who we were going to have. There's been some great Diamondbacks players over the years, some good ones on the roster right now. Ketel Marte is fun to watch, but I think there is quite a gap between definitely number 5 and beyond, but I think between number 4 and beyond as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And we'll see what the future holds. I mean, Marte's just starting out. He keeps going like he's going. He could absolutely lap some of these guys, but you just never know with who have made the franchise what they are up until 2022. These are the guys.
And winning a championship bolsters your resume.
That helps a lot
as well.
Yeah.
So that'll do it for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Just to recap, Randy Johnson, Luis Gonzalez, Kurt Schilling, and Paul Goldschmidt, our Mount Rushmore. We agreed completely this week. Next week, we're going to head to Colorado and talk about the Rockies as who is their top 4. I know one pops to mind as soon as I hear Colorado Rockies, maybe even 2, but the other 2, that's going to be a fun little debate to have next
Chris
week.
Bryant, are you thinking?
It's not going to be Chris Bryant. That's going to do it for this week's episode of the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for giving us a listen. Again, share it, drop a comment. If you want to hear us talk about something, just let us know. We are more than happy to talk about whatever you guys want to hear about. Again, I want to thank Luke for hopping on as well, talking about some NBA basketball. We'll have him back on next week as the NBA Finals are getting rolling now. And, of course, Jacob will be back on to talk some baseball as well. And we'll see if we bring back football into the fold next week. A lot of positions we haven't really touched on and off-season stuff we haven't talked about. So that'll be coming up next week on the Kingsmen Sports Podcast. Until then, have a great week.